All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, fellow Pandemonium travelers, this is Seattle Pandemonium Shutdown Day 274 by my count. So what's going down? What's going on? We've got, I don't know, election shenanigans continue. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I'm tired of it. I've had enough. Let me know. Let's get it going. Let's do it. Let's get it going. Whatever you think you're gonna do, go ahead and do it. I'm tired of it. December 7th, 2020, a date which will live in infamy, I guess. It was 41, 9 is 50, so 59 plus 20 is 79, so 79 years ago today. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. So, I've always been more of a fan, if you can be a fan of a war theater. And I don't mean war theater like the Broadway version of Saving Private Ryan. What I mean is the European theater of World War II as opposed to the Pacific theater. I know a lot more about the European theater. There's something about it. I don't know, our fascination with Nazis. Maybe it's the Holocaust getting in there. It's how close the European theater came to losing. But then, you know, you start digging into the Pacific theater and it's kind of the same thing. Like, we almost lost, guys. Like, we were right there on the cusp of just having Japan just roll across the entire Pacific, Southeast Asia, maybe Australia. It all could have just completely worked out differently if not for a series of major and minor miracles that I say we as though I was there, as that our boys pulled off out there. From you know, Pearl Harbor when they attacked us, that's December 7th. So the Japanese, this is a thing that I understand there's controversy about this, but like, you can question whether or not we should have nuked Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There is debate about the you know, the reasonableness of that action. But what you have to understand is World War II, and I'm going to steal from Victor Davis Hanson here, the World War II was basically the Germans and the Japanese, a little bit of the Italians, you guys were in there too, just spreading out over the earth and just slaughtering tens of millions of people. And then the Allies, in response, started killing Germans and Japanese until they stopped fighting. And, like, that's the story, okay? You can try to say, oh, America aggressed, or this was my favorite, is, well, FDR knew they were going to attack Pearl Harbor and let them do it as a pretense to go to war. It's like, okay. I mean, that's also, like, years after they've already been, you know, raping the rest of East Asia, but okay. FDR let them do it so that we would then go to war and stop them from doing that. Okay, all right. I mean, I'm not a fan of socialist presidents who are basically dictators myself, but you know, keep some perspective here. But yeah, they attacked us at Pearl Harbor, sank a bunch of our ships, and I think it was the Yorktown. The Yorktown became this ghost ship. Like, I think it was already in dry dock, and they hit it with a bomb, and they thought this thing is toast. But Nimitz, Admiral Nimitz, was like, nope, you're going to patch the deck of this thing with wood, and you're going back out to sea. I need this aircraft carrier. And the numbers were so stacked against us. It was like, I can't remember exactly. We had like 3 aircraft carriers. The Japanese had like 9 or something. Battleships, they had like 8. We had like 2. It was just like all stacked against us in terms of aircraft. Like the Zero was the premier state-of-the-art aircraft for that era. It could turn faster, climb higher, climb faster, fly faster for longer, had better weapons. And then the pilots, of course, had combat experience, so going up against them with our guys who had really only done, you know, lots of training flights was not fair. You know, it's not fair, but that's the point of war, right? And Pearl Harbor was the spark that woke the sleeping giant, as they say. It's again, one of these, like, nexus events where all these factors come together, and it's this kind of insane moment that triggers a cascade of other events. Then you have the Battle of the Coral Sea. Now we're at war. Now we go out and put up a showing and see how we do. We didn't do too well. we really didn't. And then you have the Battle of Midway, where Midway, talk about a nexus event. It's like the invasion of Normandy. It's like all of world history fluctuates. It turns like a wheel around an axle around this one day. It really, like a few hours, and in some cases a few minutes. Our planes find the Japanese fleet. The Japanese are not expecting it, and we sink 3 of their aircraft carriers in one day and completely basically change the entire tide of the war. And no one thought we could do it. We didn't necessarily know we could do it. And then we start the long march across all these Southeast Asian islands, pushing the Japanese all the way back to Nippon, and then ultimately nuking them into submission. And it all started December 7th, 1941. And when you look at it in hindsight, that's why there's a million movies and stuff and shows about this stuff, is you look at it from the outset of the war and you go, wow. They annihilated what was most of our Pacific fleet, caught us off guard. We were unprepared, and it seemed as though they were going to win. It's much like the Battle of Britain. It's like, it looks like the Nazis are going to win until they don't. Spoilers. But yeah, that's the story of America. And again, there's like revisionist sort of history about like whether or not we should have nuked them. There's some issues there. Was it experimentation to see what it looks like when you actually nuke a city? Maybe. Did the Japanese people, this is the issue, did the Japanese people deserve their fate? Well, yes and no. The issue is they were also kind of like committed to their, detour. Detour? I don't want a detour, I want a retour. Were they committed to their regime? Was that their country? Was that their empire? Were they fighting for it, or were they being ordered to? This is always the question, right? And then at some point, of course, you go, well, it seems as though enough of you are not pushing back against it, so it sort of doesn't matter because you're part of this machine and we have to dismantle this machine. I understand how ruthless that sounds. But that's the thing about, like, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. The people of Pearl Harbor didn't do anything wrong. They just exist and are part of the United States, and you just attacked them. So what are they supposed to do? Just be like, oh, well, just go ahead and just take over the Pacific Ocean, take Hawaii. Yeah, I'll be a Japanese, subject of the Japanese emperor rather than a citizen of the United States. That'll be fine. No, it's not fine. And of course, the Japanese under the emperor were probably like, no, I don't want to be an American citizen. I want to be a Japanese citizen, a subject of the emperor, whatever it is. They want to be part of the Japanese empire. If they didn't, they would rise up and not do that. I don't know. It's a little simplistic, but like, look back at how that era functioned and the widespread world war. It was a massive power grab. And who came out on top? The Soviet Union and the United States. Britain didn't come out on top. That was basically the end of their empire. The French didn't come out on top. Basically the end of their empire. The Germans definitely didn't come out on top. Japanese kind of came out okay long term. I mean, they've got some issues with their society and stuff, but so do we. But the Cold War, Korea. The Koreans did not come out all right out of, World War II in general. China came out on top. I mean, we saved China from the Japanese, and they did horrible, horrible things, the Japanese. They did horrible things to the Chinese. Things that I don't want to repeat. Like, just horrific, horrific things. You look up Unit 571. Is that what it is? 571? 751. The Men Behind the Sun was the film. Absolutely horrific. The things that they planned to do. And then here's the other dark part of all of this is, allegedly, I'm going to say, my understanding is, we took their human experimentation data in exchange for leniency, for their war crimes. There was no Nuremberg trial for the Pacific Theater. Let's put it that way. At least in Europe, there was a Nuremberg for the Nazis to be held, to account. And, all the crimes to be reviewed and everything else, right? No such thing happened in the Pacific, and I think it left a sort of chilling effect long term because no one was held accountable for the awful things that they did, and that might include American soldiers and stuff too. I mean, if we're gonna be honest, like things were a little hot and heavy. Let's just say tempers were, people were salty. Let's say that, to be glib. And then like Operation Paperclip, I think Werner von Braun fired rockets at England that were built by Jewish Holocaust slave labor. We got him because, of course, he wanted to surrender to us and not the Soviets, and put him to work building our Saturn V rockets. Now, Nazi rocketry took us to the moon. Holy fuck. Oh. Okay. Yeah, we stopped for the fucking emergency services, shithead. God. You're such terrible drivers. Pull over for emergency services, you idiot. What the hell are you doing sitting in the middle of the road? Oh, God. Anyways, Nazi rockets. Werner von Braun built the Saturn V, took us to the moon. So Nazi rocketry took us to the moon. Bayer aspirin came out of IG Farben, which was part of the, Nazi, fascist corporate regime. They developed Bayer aspirin by doing human experimentation, is my understanding. So we have Nazi medicine and Nazi rockets, and probably all kinds of other things came out of the Japanese human experimentation as a result of them starting a war and then us finishing it. And us getting involved started today, 79 years ago. So that's enough for me for a Monday. How's that for some fun stuff on a Monday? All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.